Welcome, Homeworthy, to my shop in West Cornwall, Connecticut. I'm Michael Trapp. Come on in.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
When I bought West Cornwall and when I moved in, it just meant the earth and the sky to me. It was everything. I was an antique dealer. I had dropped out of college. I had worked in a restaurant. I left my family on bad terms with $20. And I sort of started everything out of that. And I never thought I would be able to buy a house. And so when I started pursuing this, I did every flea market. I did every antique show. I sold everything that I had. I would go out and buy more. I was maniacal about doing it. And I was traveling all the time. I was driving back and forth across the country. I was doing all that kind of stuff. But I thought I would never be able to get a loan. And a wonderful friend of mine who was an art restorer gave me the advice that just go in with a big sack of money and trust me, they'll give you a loan, because that's what she did when she moved back from Rome. And I was like, they're not going to do that. I'm a kid, I don't have any credit, whatever. Anyway, I did that. I went in and I put 70% down. And they called me Mr. Trapp, and that was very odd because I thought that's my father. But this is my home, and this has always had magic. There's magic on this land. There's magic in the lower garden. And, when it was a lawn and messy and unloved and trash dumped in on the hillside, it still had magic. There's something about the water and the sounds of the water, and the sound of the stream is different from the sound of the rivers, and it's different from the sound of the fountain, but it's always had this magic, and you can feel it, and you just listen to what it's telling you, and it directs you to whatever, and it gives you energy. The farm has magic. The land has magic, and that's what I look for when I'm looking for property. And it's not something you can identify, but you know it when you feel it, and it's there. And it's good magic, not bad magic. Some things have bad magic, and I try and avoid those at all costs. This is my shop in West Cornwall, and let's see, I've been here since 1990. And before I was here, this part of the shop was a bookseller's shop. And the only part that he used as a shop was that room, which still has the bookshelves in it. I just put glass shelves in them and converted the bookshelves into display cabinets. The thing about Cornwall is the zoning in Cornwall is really bizarre. So you can have, it's commercial zoning 100 feet from the center of Main Street. And so this falls within the 100 feet of Main Street, and you can use it as commercial or residential or both, which is an unusual kind of zoning. So I could live upstairs, which I did for 16 years, and then I have my shop downstairs. I think I took out 34 doors, lots and lots of walls, a few staircases. I moved the staircase from over here to over there, and pretty much everything you see wasn't here. I covered all the walls in plywood and painted them. I painted the floors. It's 14 different layers of paint, layer and layer and layer, and then they've gotten beat up over the years from dragging things in and out. But all in all, it looks like it's been here a long time. And this is the main room. It's kind of a cabinet of curiosities. There's things from all over the world, and fun things, rare things, exotic things, inexpensive things. But it just makes it fun, and it makes it sort of interesting. In here, this is what we call the back room. When the house was built in the 1820s, it was built by a man named Daniel Scoville, who was the village doctor. And this is the room that he had as his office. And it came with a safe that was in there. And this was the door to his office, which is behind that big pot. But now there's no stairs and you'll fall to your death if you go out there. So that's why the big pot's in front of it. Here we've got a whole collection of kind of natural history, museum-y kind of things, and baskets. There's chandeliers. It's a teak storefront from Java. And I've got the rest of the framing. It's too tall to fit in here, but the whole thing kind of like opens up and closes. It's really cool. Make a nice pool house front. This is my apartment, which is above the shop. This is where I lived for 16 years. And it's beautiful and it's really lovely. And I really love always coming back to this. In here, I've collected things, little things, Roman things, Baroque things, Renaissance things from all kinds of periods. And you know, I've put them in these cases. Again, I've made the cases out of old windows. It's a theme that I have going on throughout my life. They're just really beautiful. Egyptian glass, Roman glass, Apulian vases. These are bones of Roman soldiers. They were found in Marseille, a collection of strange green beetles, which is what the tag says. They're fun things that I've picked up all of my life, all over the place. The paintings are done by a woman named Minerva Chapman. And she, again, was another woman of means. And she was a painter, which was even more egregious to the males painters at the time. And she was a contemporary of Maria Cassatt. And she exhibited in the Paris salons. They allowed her to exhibit her small still lifes, but I have a whole collection of her portraits, and several of them are of her lover, some of her maid, and things like that. But I think she's extremely gifted in capturing people. And this is my sitting room. The sofa's in. At the farm, I combined this sofa and that sofa, all the things I liked about them the most. This one is an English sofa and that one is an Italian sofa. And then I designed them and I merged the two together, and that's what's at the farm. But these I'm always very fond of. And the cabinet behind me is called a Schrank, which is German, instead of Kasse, which is Dutch, or armoire, which is French, or wardrobe, which is English. It's 17th century from Augsburg, and furniture at that time, people moved, and so their furniture came apart, because they would take their furniture with them, because they had a lot of servants who could take the furniture apart and pack it up into the wagon and then haul it around and reassemble it. I've always liked this color, this sort of like these reds and this sort of like richness, and it's sort of Baroque. There's a nice sort of like deep earthy feeling. You know, there's a lovely lobster still life and an oval, 17th century oval convex mirror. Lots of little things that I've picked up, you know, over my life. They give me great pleasure to look at, you know. My bedroom is positioned so I can wake up and I can look out and I can sort of look over my garden. In the winter, you'll see bald eagles flying up and down the river, hunting and fishing. And that's pretty cool. And when I first lived here, I had hundreds and hundreds of hollyhocks, and the hollyhocks were so tall that you would see them out the bedroom window, and it was like being in like an Alice in Wonderland kind of garden. And here I've got like a Dutch chest and Roman pots and a French Dartford screen, you know, bits of 17th century altar fronts. That's what the lace is. This room's all kind of white on white on white on white, and it's very peaceful. It's really simple, and it's a really pleasant place to wake up to, and it's a nice place to go to sleep to. The difference between this bedroom and my current bedroom is I did this when I was 29 years old. That I did when I was 55 years old. And it's a very different thing. When I first did this house, I painted, everything was white. That room was white, everything was white. The shop wasn't white, the shop was what it was because I painted all the walls and floors. But this I did white because it was the easiest, simplest way to start to get sort of going because it's a clean palette. I didn't have time to experiment with color until later. And as I got older, I started experimenting more and more with color, and I'm much more comfortable with color. But I've always found this white on white in this bedroom because of the light, and there's so much going on outside. It feels like this is the right color, it's the right feel, it's the right look for the environment, for this particular environment. If you look out through here, it's got a very pretty view of the garden. And it always has that kind of, it's sort of like that movie, A Room with a View. With a little pruning, we could have this all back in a jiffy, but you know, it's fine. The roof line used to come down here like it does on the other side, and it had 2 small windows. And it has this sensational view over the river. And so it just seems silly. So I put the peak in the French doors and the windows to bring light in here, as well as be able to open it up and get some air circulation and to see the river and the garden. This is the guest room in West Cornwall. And this is the cupboard bed. It's French from Normandy or Brittany, and it's called a lit clos. They would build them against the back of the fireplace in the 18th century. And what that did was the winters there are pretty cold and pretty nasty, but the heat of the fireplace would come through the masonry, and it would keep the bedchamber warm because they would close the doors. And usually they go deep against the back of the fireplace, and I just made this one long because I wanted someplace long enough that I could sleep, because usually I give people my room and I wind up in the cupboard bed, and it's rather nice, you know, if you're feeling down or needing a little bit of protection, you can just like close the doors and get a book and nap away in there. It's a nice room. Again, it's white on white like all the rest of the other bedroom. This painting is, again, it's one of Minerva Chapman's, like the ones in here and like the ones in the bedroom. It's one of her series of portraits, and she's done kind of a mirror reflection of this man, except that's not him, but he's here and he's here and he's here. And in the bathroom at the farm, there's another one where there's probably 16 paintings about this big, and they're all women, and some of them are like well-known women of Paris society, but she also painted her maids in them as well. And it's really cool. And she was just studying, and she just has a beautiful way of creating life and that sort of mystery within paint. There's a depth that captivates, that pulls you in. My father was a professor of logistics in the Air Force. And so we moved around all the time. You would get transferred every 1 to 3 years. And so I was born in Maine, lived in France, lived in Spain, and I grew up in Ohio because my father's health failed. And when we were little, their motto was, "Don't make friends, we're leaving." And so you never had a home. There wasn't all the grandparents were dead when we were born. So there wasn't a family home, there wasn't an area that you were from, and because you kept moving around, the only thing that you had control of was your imagination and what you could keep inside of your head. It was good experience. It was hard as a child. I remember not liking it at all, because there was always this sort of uncertainty that the rug would be pulled out from underneath your feet. And so when I was looking to buy a home, I looked all over, and I looked at all kinds of things. I looked at, you know, converted chicken coops and old bank buildings in Vermont. And I was in this area already When I bought this, I thought I'm going to make my home and I'm going to put down roots and I'm going to put them down deep because I'm never leaving. And that's what I've done. And that's what the garden is. And that's what the whole thing is. And I've carved it out with my own hands. I was much younger when I did this. And that's the difference between West Cornwall and the farm. The garden at the farm is much more simplified. It's much more easy to take care of. It's much more, I'm not exploring those parts of my imagination. I know where my mind is, and I want things a little more streamlined. And here I was like, the sky was the limit. I could, if I wanted to do Baroque, I could do Baroque. I could do, I wanted a grotto, I made a grotto. I did all kinds of things, but I had tons of energy. And I used to be able to build stone walls really, really quickly. And it would make people really, really crazy. But I loved doing it. It was all spatial analysis. And you look at a stone and you think, oh, that's this, the void I'm looking for is in the shape of Arkansas. So you look for a stone that's the shape of Arkansas and you put that in, and then you think, okay, I need North Carolina, will fit in there. So it was just like, that's how I built stone walls. And I don't build them with cement. I only build them dry laid. In the process of building them, I broke my back, which is why I put the lap pool in. And I did that for therapy, as well as it's very pretty. And I like my pool very much. There's reasons behind a lot of these choices. One of my favorite things here, this used to be a screened-in porch, but I made it into a conservatory because I've always had plants since I was a kid, and I've dragged plants around, and now they've gotten bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. This is where I move most of my plants in the winter. And it's sunny, it faces south. There's a roof on it, so it's not like a greenhouse, so it doesn't overheat, which means it doesn't get a lot of insect problems. And I keep it cool, because plants in general, they don't want it to be hot, they want it to be on the cool side. And it just keeps them happier. And in here we usually sell like garden-y things. We've got all of the cushions that I have made in Indonesia by Fanny and her sisters, who've been making cushions for me forever, it feels like. You get those, the colors only come once a year and that's it. And after that's gone, they're gone forever. So the best-selling things for the shop, every season it's a little different. In the fall, when the sun starts going down earlier, we like to refer to it as lamp season, because people start buying things that turn on because they go home from work and their apartment's dark, so they want a lamp to sort of light things up. In the spring, it's definitely garden. Throughout the year, we're selling a lot of, like the Tuareg mats and carpets, and a lot of designers come in and they'll buy furniture and things like that for projects. Architects sort of source things out for things that they're doing. It used to be more seasonal years ago, but it's much less so now. It's kind of, maybe it's just the website and social media and things like that. People just don't follow those patterns like they used to. I think for people that are decorating or wanting to furnish their homes, I think it's really important to follow your heart. Find things that make you happy. I would do a little at a time and I would add to it. Everybody's tastes are different, but I think when you try and follow trends, the problem with that is it locks you into a certain movement and a certain moment, and often that sometimes it feels dated. When I'm doing projects for people, I try and use some beautiful old things, and I like to use some new things, and I like to use simple carpets and things like that so that they look, it has a contemporary feeling and a more modern feeling, but it's a little on the spare side, but it has a texture and a soul. Because if you go too far one way or too far in the other way. It becomes a little more like, if you're trying to do a period piece or something like that, it's sort of like, that's not as interesting. I think it's more fun if it's a little more playful. And you feel comfortable to put your feet on the sofas, and you feel comfortable to walk around, and you don't feel like you have to dress to be inside of your own home. It's an Italian fountain filled with lemons and artichokes from an anniversary party I just did. It's good. We're reusing the decorations. I love lemons and I love artichokes. I will take you through the garden right now. Shall we go? This is my garden. We're outside of the conservatory, and my garden is something that I started when the second year I was here. The first year I worked on the shop, and the second year I sort of worked on the house. And then I finished it in June, and I was desperate and full of energy, and I wanted to do something, and I wanted to do gardening, but I'd sort of run out of money doing the parking in front. So I thought, I know, I'll do paths, because I thought that would be great. So I ordered a truck of riprap, and I ordered a truck of pea stone, which is gravel. And I never asked the guy how big his truck was. So he backed up into my driveway and dumped like this mountain of gravel in the middle of it, and said he'd be back in an hour with the rest of it. And I thought, I was just too embarrassed to tell him not to bother coming back. So this was a lawn, and it sloped this way to the stream, and it sloped that way to the river. And I thought, I'll just start digging up the lawn and using up all of that pea stone and getting rid of it. So I just went, and I thought, I want to go from here to here, I want to go from there to there, I want to go from there, I've got a little left over, I'll do that as well. And this is what it took to get rid of those two mountains of stuff in my driveway. Maybe like 5 or 6 years after that, I bought half of a road with my neighbor, and it was the entrance to a factory called the Scoville factory, and it was all cobblestone. We had to dig it up. We had a 1-week salvage right, had to take the asphalt off it, break it all apart, drive it here, throw it in the driveway, go back and get some more. And it was at the time that my father was dying, and so I think I just sort of channeled all that energy and all those memories and all those feelings into like laying cobblestones, and which is nice because it gives it this impression that it's been here for a long, 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 long time, as cobblestones do. The beds are all, they're sort of geometric. It's not, each one's different. I have them all bordered with boxwood, and I had these iron railings made, and I made these little stone walls because it's on a slope, and I was terracing everything, and I took all the grass that I was yanking up, and I knocked all the topsoil off into the bed. So the beds are very deep in topsoil, which means the plants are very happy. And I just let the insides go wild. They self-seed, things come, things die, things get really big. You know, I just let that happen, but they have sort of a formal border on them. It makes it look nice all year long. And so it looks nice in the winter as well as the spring and the summer. And it doesn't really rely so heavily on flower material as it does on the structure of it. The house is built in 1830 by Dr. Daniel Scoville. And it exploded in the 1870s because they had a coal furnace. And there's some graffiti in the shop that says, you know, I was sitting here when the house exploded, you know, blah, 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 1870. In 1870, they changed all the roof lines and they Victorianized it. So it has this kind of like Victorian kind of steep roofs. It has 7 gables, which is nice, you know, but it's not in Salem, Massachusetts, so nor did Hawthorne write about it. All of that is pretty original. I added the peak in the back with a little balcony, which is behind that rose bush. And when I did the kitchen was made of like a side porch that was brick and some sliding doors, and there was a pantry with this rotted window, and there was like this kind of weird kitchen-y thing in there. And so I opened the whole thing up and kind of put a pediment on the back, because I was in a classical phase of my life. And I always fill my pediments with things. This is kind of like ode to like broken pottery and things like that. Things that were too pretty to throw away, and I could just glue them together. Except for the woman in the middle, she's 17th century and she's English. I've always like lived on water and grew up on water, and I've always been around water. And I've got the rivers in the back, and on the side is a stream. But I also wanted something a little closer and created this terrace. And the terrace is very pretty. This is Iris. She's the queen of the manor. She came from the Little Guild, the animal charity that I'm the co-chairman of. This capital is from north of Cincinnati. It came off the front of an insane asylum. I had a pair. I sold the other one to my friend in London, Robert Kime. So it's in his garden somewhere. I love this. I love the view of the river. I like, in the winter, there's eagles that fly up and down because they're fishing in the rapids. The balustrade is from a bridge in Minneapolis. And I had like the cap. The French call this the main-courant, which is the hand rest. And then the base, I had those carved in France. And then I did the plinths to sort of break it up a little bit. These are pollarded, this kind of like flattening of trees. It's very French. But it provides this kind of wonderful shade in here, and it kind of makes a roof over this. So you have, again, feeling of architecture within the garden by using plant material. And this is a lovely place to sit, and we have lunch here almost every day. This is my lap pool in West Cornwall, and I love my pool. I built it to sort of help heal my back from when I broke it building the walls along the stream. I used to go into lots of pools and I try and look and see how long they were and what made them work and what didn't make them work. And I did this because it's like long and narrow, because I wanted to be able to swim and not have to constantly like turn around and flip over and do all that kind of fancy stuff. So this is long enough, and I've got the fountain at the end, so it alerts me to the fact that I'm getting close and I'm not going to bang my head on the wall. And then when I get down on that end, I'm underneath the hemlocks, and I can sort of like see them, and that tells me that I should like slow down a bit and get ready to turn. It's the same depth from one side to the other, and it's about 5.5 feet. So you can stand wherever you are, and it's very peaceful, because when you're swimming, you're looking up into the canopy of the trees and kind of seeing their, you know, structure and their build and all of that kind of stuff. And it's a very, very beautiful pool. And again, this is the coping that I had made in France by Monsieur Altaviti. And it looks like it's been here forever. The French limestone takes on a really nice patina pretty quickly. When I was putting this in, the guy I hired to put the pool in, he's like, "You can't put it there." And I said, "Why not?" And he said, well, that's not how it's done. I'm like, "Well, that's where I want it." And he's like, no, it's never going to work. And I said, "Yes, it will." And I brought him down here, and I staked it all out, and I said, "So, you know, it goes into that hill, and then I'll stick up that, and I'll just build the stone walls up." Because this used to be a whole hillside of daylilies. So, you know, he did it, and he was like, bitched about the whole thing the entire time, and it was kind of like, nah. It's good, I like it. And this is my grotto. I always wanted a grotto. When I was a kid, I wanted a grotto. At one of the French markets years ago, I bought a big crate of stone that came out of an Italian grotto, and that's all this stuff. And it's like fossilized coral. And I thought, this is the start, now I'll do the rest. I resalvaged, here's more Belgian bluestone, a Ming table, corals and bits from, you know, Indian architecture. This is a two-way mirror from a bank in Chicago, and I put it in this frame. We had an earthquake last year, and the mirror shifted and the mirror cracked. So I don't know what that means, but it always stays really cool in here. So it's a beautiful place to come, you know, and have drinks on a hot summer day, or use it as, you know, a changing room to go into the pool. It's very nice. It's very peaceful because it's built into the hill itself, which was a bit of a trick, but that's all done. And these columns came from Bath, Maine, and I was born in Bath, Maine, so I have a fondness for these columns. The only walls that were on this property when I bought it were from here to here. It was like these three terraces that held these hemlock trees. And all the walls going that way I built, and all the walls going this way I built, and all of this sort of stuff I built in this building I call the library. Originally there was a little structure that was right here, and I always called it the witch's house. It was kind of ramshackle. One of the daughters of the family that lived here before I bought it had lived in it. I used to keep my lawnmower in it, and I thought it was perfect. I'll just drag it down there, and I'll put the pool equipment in it because I didn't want to see the pool equipment. And I hired these guys, and they said, can we tear it down and then build a new one? And I said, okay, I know where this is going. It's easier. So anyway, they did. And then they started framing it, and I'm like, this looks bigger. And they said, no, it's the right size. I said, did you measure? They said, oh yes, we measured. And then they got the corner posts up, and I said, this is a lot bigger. And they said, well, you can always use more space. And I said, you know, that's like giving crack addict. And I said, I don't really want more space. This is now too nice to put my pool equipment in. So I turned it into this. It's a little cabinet of curiosities, and there's a German collection of footprints here from some little museum, and fossilized Naga shells. This is a Naga hat from Burma. Nagas are headhunters. Here's one of their raincoats. So you wear this when you're gathering things in the tropics. I bought a collection of bird eggs in Bermondsey in England a long time ago. The guy at customs wanted to know if I had anything to declare, and I said, well, it's really calcium at this point because all the eggs are empty. And he seemed to accept that. The columns were Irving Berlin's. They came out of his dressing room. His daughter was a good friend of mine, and so that's kind of nice. And there's more Naga spears. They're kind of nice. And of course, a chicken skeleton. Home is where you find peace. Home is safety. Home is security. Magic is nice, but it's not necessarily what has to define a home. A home is where your heart is. A home is where you're comfortable. It's where you are and where you're present. There's lovely places that are really beautiful and, you know, exquisite and furnished, and they don't feel like home. You know, I love going to those places and being in those spaces, but I don't want to stay there. I want to come here. This is mine. I've done it with my hands. I've done it with my heart. I've done it with my friends. It has lots and lots of good memories for me. As it gets older, it gets more interesting and it gets more fascinating. This is me. This is where, you know, my heart is always here. When the chips are down, this is where I come. Homeworthy, I hope you enjoyed your tour. I had a lovely time myself. And now it's time for me to go back to work. And I'm going to work down here because it's quiet and it's by my pool, and I'll take a little swim afterwards. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content and shopping guides.